data model. Under that particular data model, we created one parent entity in the form of type 1 entity and added some attributes under the type 1 entity. So these are the direct attributes that we added under type 1 entity. And this is the entity itself, your type 1 entity itself become one of the key attribute in the generated staging table. And after that, we added a child entity, type 4 entity. Under type 4 entity, we whenever you create a type 4 entity, so usually you'll be having a leading relationship with a parent entity that is nothing but your type 1 entity. So that because of the leading relationship, you got a key field as material. And we also created another type 4 type 3 entity, and we made a qualifying relation with this particular type 3 entity, so that these two will become key attributes in the generated staging table. And we added 3 direct attributes under child entity. And after that, we also created one type 3, and we made a reference relationship with a type 4 entity. So these two, I mean, this particular we created 2 type 3s, but one type 3 having a qualifying relation with type 4, another type 3 having a reference relation with type 4. So the difference is, wherever you see a qualifying relation, it will become a key attribute. Wherever you see it as a reference relation, it will just get added as a normal attribute. So this is what we created in the last session. So with this one, what we discussed basically SU type 1, yeah. Okay, so we discussed about SU type 1, SU type 3, SU type 4. Okay, and we also discussed about leading relation, and we also discussed about qualifying relationship. We also discussed about reference relationship. I didn't remember if I discussed SU type 2 in the last session. Anyone remember that? Did we discuss SU type 2? Okay, let's do a quick, we'll discuss about type 2. So these are the most commonly used entities, either in custom data models or this will be in the custom data model. For sure, you will have this kind of, these 3 we will be using. But when it comes to material master, business partner, or the standard data models, we hardly use these 2 only, because type 1 will be already available in the standard out-of-box data models. We don't create a new type 1. We only create usually we end up creating type 4. And when you are creating a type 4, we'll create a type 3 as well. So this is what we work on the standard data models. Okay. Now, when we will use type 2, what is type 2? Okay. So for type 2, type 2 is actually equivalent to your type 3 only. Okay. Type 3 and type 2, the purpose is same. Okay, the qualifying or whatever, it will refer the data that exists in that particular table, reference master data table. The purpose is different. I mean, the purpose is same, but what is the difference in terms of where this particular your reference master data exists? Okay, so that is the important one. Okay, now this is my MDG system. This is a ECC or ERP component. This is my MDG component. Okay, so let's say, for example, T001W plant table is there. Okay, so this is the config table that is available in your ERP layer. Now, if at all I wanted to refer this in my MDG layer, so what I will do is I'll create a SU type 3. I create an SU type 3, and I will refer this as my reference master data table, so that this will act as your SU type 3 here. Basically, for SU type 3s, there is no staging table gets created. Instead of creating a new staging table, it will reuse the existing reference master data table. It can be your plants, countries, or any reference master data. It will use that as a reference master. And whenever you are creating, when you are extending a material to a plant or anything, it will actually refer your SU type 3. It should be available there. And then it can extend to that particular plant or anything. You can use that master data. Okay, so this is the purpose of SU type 3. So in case of SU type 3, the underlying table resides in your ERP layer. Okay, now in case of there are certain scenarios where I don't have that reference master data table. Okay, like plants or all those things, I don't have a reference master data table. Let's take for example, in any project, service categories are there. I'm just taking an example of service category. When you are actually creating a particular vendor in your MDG system, so basically your business says that, okay, what services this particular vendor provides, list of services. Okay, so it can be either software services, or it can be maybe for example any interior services, or it can be probably providing some hardware, or providing certain laptops, or providing office equipment. So they assume that you have some different service categories. So whenever you are creating a vendor, you need to map that, okay, so this vendor will provide this service name, this service, these are the different services. Okay, so in this case, these services are become your reference master data, like plants. Okay, you need to choose the list of services while creating a vendor. In that case, there is no standard SAP configuration similar to your plant or anything. You don't have such kind of standard one, because service category is your business specific need, and you need to create your own reference master data. One option is either you can create one Z service category table, one master reference master data table, Z table, in ERP layer, and create one SU type 3 here and refer this one. So this is just like your how you if at all you wanted to go with the SU type 3. The other option is, assume that I don't want this particular data, this data in my ERP layer, because these service categories will be helpful for me to take certain decisions while approving that master data. Based on the service category, I will decide whether it should go for one level approval or 2-level approval. Okay, in that case, that is only for my MDG purpose. I need the service categories to take some decisions during my workflow while approving the request. In that case, I don't actually require this in ERP layer. I need this particular service category table here, my reference master data, service category. Okay, so I need a table in my MDG layer which will store the list of service categories instead of creating that in my ERP layer. And this particular service category, I'll use it as a reference master data. So in this case, you create a SU type 2. Okay, so if you create an SU type 2, what happens is system will generate automatically one staging table for you, and this particular staging table will contain all the reference master data, list of service categories, that you can load that list of service categories into this particular one. Okay, and then you can actually use, let's say for example, you created a SU type 4. For SU type 4, you make a qualifying relation with your SU type 3 qualifying relationship. So it exactly works how your SU type 3 works. The only difference is, in case of SU type 2, SAP MDG generates one staging table for you, and you can use that staging table to store your reference master data, to load your either service categories or any reference master data. This is one option. If you're going for SU type 2, that means only you will go for the SU type 2 situation, where you can actually, you wanted to create your the reference master data table in MDG. If at all you are using the standard tables, plants or countries or unit of measures, then you can actually go for an SU type 3 and link your existing ECC table. ERP table. That is the only difference. But the previous one, I can create a Z table in my ERP layer and I can create an SU type 3. That is also possible. That is the reason most of the people, they just simply create, irrespective of whether I need it in MD only in MDG or not. People will go and create in ERP layer, and they just create an SU type 3 instead of SU type 2, because they don't know the difference between type 2 and type 3, and always my requirement is can be fulfilled by you creating a SU type 3 in MDG. Okay, but what as per MDG standards, the reason behind SAP provided SU type 2 and SU type 3 is, if something is already available which you wanted to use it across all the systems, then try to create an SU type 3 for the existing configurations under ERP. But if something is a custom attribute where you wanted to refer the use it as a reference master data, and that too you don't need that this particular information in your underlying ERP. Once your request got created at vendor master record level, I'm not storing any service categories, only to approve one level approval or two level approval. That for that one I need this information. So in that case, it makes sense for me to create this table in my MDG layer. Okay, now let's look at the description of your type 2. Okay, okay, here if you look at the description, changeable without change request. So that means here this service category is actually our requirement is, I'm creating a vendor or I'm changing a vendor. Vendor master is my actual requirement. So that vendor master always can be changed by a change request. Okay. But the service categories is nothing but it's my reference master data. So that I can load or I can change without any change request, because you wanted to change the plant description. Okay. So you don't need to create a change request. You can directly go to plant configuration, SPRO, and go to that particular plant and do the change, whatever change you want for this one. Okay, so that means for 2 and 3 cases, actually there is no change request concept involved. Here I'm changing the either plant properties or my service category properties. I'm not changing the vendor properties. If at all you are changing a vendor property, change request is involved. If you are changing, I created a new service category. We introduced a new service category. So I wanted to load that new service category into my reference master data table. For that one, SAP provided a file upload mechanism where you can actually load the new service categories as and when there are new categories you are introducing. Okay, so for that one there is no change request concept. That's why changeable without change request. To create a new service categories, to load that into your custom table, Z table or staging table, you no need to create a change request. That's why you can see generated check table and text tables. So this is what I'm generated table means. When you create a type 2 and activate your data model, system will generate a staging table for you. And this staging table is not on your day-to-day basis where you create a new material and when you change a material. So that is, I mean, this particular one is basically which stores your category information, reference master data. So this is not part of your change request process. Only when you are creating a material or when you are creating a vendor, and it will go and look into that particular vendor service category list, whether these are valid categories or not. Okay, so there is no change request, and system will generate a staging table to store your reference master data. In case of type 3, that means you will already have this table. In case of type 2, MDG framework generates this table. That is the only difference. Okay, is this clear to everyone?
I think I get some sense of understanding. An example would be nice.
Akshay, that Z service catalog table, which is showing in the MDG layer, that is automatically being created, or the developer will create it in the MDG system?
No. It will automatically gets created. This whenever you create a type 2, automatically in the backend system generates this service category. I mean, a generated staging table for you.
Okay, this is staging table. Yes, okay.
Yeah. So in ECC, I mean, if you are using this T001 table, we are not creating. This is already created. If at all for country, for languages, so all those T tables, we call it as your SPRO config tables, are already available in your ERP. We are not creating. I'm just referring those tables by SU type 3. So that is why in case of SU type 3, there is no staging table gets created, because the table is already available over here. In case of type 2, that means there is no table, I mean, available in ERP layer. So system will generate a table for you here. Instead of you creating the table, system will generate a table for you, and you need to load the data into this particular table separately. Let's say I am supporting 100 service categories. So you need to load all your 100 service categories into this one.
So it's a staging table, but we will have to load the entries.
Yes. I mean, so there is a difference. I mean, we can call, because it is created by MDG framework, we call it as a staging table, but there is a difference between the actual staging tables and this reference staging table. Okay, what is the difference? In the actual staging tables, when you are creating a new material, data gets created, and once you approve that request, the data gets deleted. And again, I create one more new material, again data gets created, and after that, once the final approval is done, the data gets deleted and moved to the underlying actual tables. Okay, so that means data, it's a kind of transaction in nature. As soon as when you are editing, when you are modifying something, the data gets loaded into your staging tables. Those are nothing but your SU type 1 and SU type 4 staging tables. Okay, and these are like when once your activity approve workflow or the change request process is done, the data will be pushed to underlying ERP DB. Whereas in case of this for type 2, right, this is just like it always constant. You will have always, let's say you loaded 100 service categories. So 100 service categories will be available in this particular table. And when I'm creating a new material or when I'm creating a new vendor, so that the user has to select the service category, okay, which services he will provide. Okay, he will be providing for example, video services and some office space, office utility services, and probably maybe some hardware services or chips. He will be providing some chips. So like that, you will be having different service categories. Okay, so all those service categories, let's say for example, I have 100 service categories, but from when I'm creating a vendor, I'll choose, okay, this particular vendor will be providing videography and audiography services. Okay, so then what happens, those two services should exist in my in this particular table, so that when I'm creating a new vendor, when I select that service categories, it will come and look into whether those service category that you entered is already available in this list or not. It is similar to how your plant is validating against your T001 table.
Hi, Akshay. Is there, other than service category, is there any other type of example you can tell where you'd use this?
I mean to say any custom attributes where you wanted to have some domain data for that one. Okay, let me tell you another one. Okay, so
yeah, Akshay, my challenge is I understand the vendor concept in ERP, in ECC, where you have account groups and you tell different types of services. But this additional, when you say service category, it's kind of adds a little bit more complexity. Okay, I think an example. Yeah.
Got it. Let's say, for example, what else we can take? Let's say. Okay, let's take example of color. Okay, I'm creating a material. Let's say, for example, for that particular material, so you have your SU type 1 staging table, and this is your SU type 4 staging table. So I wanted to, while creating a particular material, I wanted to basically add, mention what is the color of this particular material. Okay, so then there are first I need to, what are the possible colors that I'm supporting for my products. So that first I need to have a list of colors with me. So those colors, I can actually create one option. I can create a table here Z table, Z color table. Okay, and I'll mention red, blue, then for example yellow, gold. So these are the 4 list of colors that I'm maintaining. Or only what are the materials that I'm creating, I'm producing, for example mobiles. So these are the colors that I can support. This is what my domain data for colors. So I'm creating a, for example, a phone, new phone, phone 1. I'm creating a product, new phone 1. Okay, for phone 1, I need to mention what is the color. Let's say for example, if I select, okay, the red, system will go and validate in this one. Okay, assume that I have one SU type 3 here. So as soon as I select a red color, via SU type 3, it will go and validate. So this red is a qualified color or not in my this one, in that in my system. So red is already there. So I can happily create this particular phone. Then I'm creating again phone 2. Then I selected a color, for example, green. User entered, or probably you got from the upstream system that, okay, so green color. Then what happens whenever the system creates a CR for this particular new phone 2, it will via SU type 3, it will go and validate green is a valid color for me or not. So there is no valid color. So this change request process will get failed. It will result into an error. You are selecting as an invalid color. The green color does not exist in the value table or in the domain list. Now this is fine. This is whatever we discussed about SU type 3. Now the same thing, assume that I don't wanted to keep this custom Z color table here. I wanted to keep here in MDG layer. This is also one option for me. Okay, so this in my MDG, I can have SU type 1, SU type 4. Here what I will do is I'll create one SU type 2. As soon as I create an SU type 2, system generates this particular staging table for me. Now, this particular staging table that got generated as a result of SU type 2, how the data gets loaded into this particular table like this one. So I need to, there is an option in MDG, file upload option. So using this particular file upload option, for all type 2s, I can load the data. Like, because I need to list down all the possible colors, right? Irrespective of my phones and everything. So these are the colors that I'm supporting in my organization. Blue, yellow, like this. Okay, so this is always constant. It will always have these 4 colors only. But when I create a new phone 1 and I entered color blue, red. Okay, so this particular now what happens via this SU type 2, it will validate in this particular table in that in the staging table that is already there. And again I create a phone 2 and I entered some color which doesn't exist, manually entered. So for example, green, it will again validate into this one. There is no green color, I'll get an error message. So the purpose is same. The only concept here remind what is the, I mean, here the point we need to understand is where this particular table lies. If you are referring some table that is available in your ERP layer, then always we will go with SU type 3. If you are referring or you wanted to create the table in MDG layer and you wanted to refer it as a reference master data, you wanted to qualify this thing, then you always go for a SU type 2. That is the difference.
I see. Got it. Understood. So, so you have to maintain, if you create it as SU type 2, you have to maintain that list separate from the list.
Yes. Yes.
In ERP.
Okay. Yes. Yes. We need to. So if in SU type 3, right? Let's say example of plants. So how do you create a new plant? We go to SPRO configuration. Via configuration, we create a new plant. As soon as from the configuration, you create a new plant. So in T001W table, a new plant gets added over here. And again, you can likewise, you can add n number of plants from your SPRO. But now in my MDG layer, this particular table is there in my MDG. How I can actually load the data, this list of values one time. So that is using file upload mechanism. So I will discuss how to load the data into this particular table when we are discussing about file upload, file download, mass processing. During that time, I will bring that one.
Actually, I have a question on this. So when the Z color table is in ECC, right? So when we're going, you said something about using it for the approval process. So let's say, let's go back. Let me start from new again. So if let's say it's in the MDG layer, the Z color table. So and we choose red for that particular material.
Yeah.
So does this have a different approval process than if we choose blue and yellow? Is that?
Yeah. So the point here is basically the reason that I wanted to go with the Z color table using SU type 2, I mean in MDG layer, because this particular color I don't need it in my when I approve my request, and when the material gets created, into this particular ERP layer, then there I don't need this information. This particular table I will be using as an intermediate as an intermediate stage, and to take some decisions in my MDG. Then only I'll go for this one. Okay, so I mean, for example, if this color and everything you need it in your ECC layer also, then always it makes sense to go with this option, because you need this domain data in your once the material got created here. Okay, so I mean, there are certain scenarios where you don't need this particular data after once the material or object got created under your ERP layer. Only this you will be using it as an temporarily to take some decisions. Let's say, for example, I would say something like how should I put that? When you are doing something, right, in your processing logic will have some temporary variables or intermediate variables, and you just keep that values temporarily, you will store into something, and then you don't need it in your final thing. So that kind of scenarios basically will go with SU type 2s.
Akshay, one other question here. So you said SU type is separate set of tables. Is it applicable when you do a core deployment versus hub deployment? Still.
So this is applicable irrespective of all your MDG concepts, whether it's a type 1, 2, 3, 4, you are leading, qualifying, all these things, right? Irrespective of whether you are in a hub or core deployment, the concept remains same.
Actually, let's say that, sorry, this is Viswas. Let's say that you want to, there's a user that says, okay, I want to make an edit change in ECC layer. So he's going into the ECC layer and he's changing the information from red or blue or yellow for the material. Okay. So he can't do that, right? In this situation, it's only an MDG layer. So he has to go to MDG layer and do it.
Yeah. So let me give one more example. I mean, you can understand another example. Let's say, for example,
actually, there's a lot of this has to do with the governance, like because we're governing an MDG layer. So when we make a decision, we're governing that decision and the approval process. That's why we wanted it in MDG versus ECC. Yeah.
I mean, what I'm trying to see, SU type 2 is not a mandatory one. Everything you can keep it SU type 3. So there's no issue. You can completely ignore that one. That's why 95% you can see people don't use SU type 2. They'll always go with SU type 3 only. Okay. I see. Okay. Only there are certain cases, maybe if at all you wanted to use, you wanted to align with the MDG best practices, then actually you can go for an SU type 2 for rare scenarios. Let me give you another example. Okay, so I'm in my I have an upstream system, okay, where the products gets created in this system. Products will get always created into this system. Okay, so that means the users will maintain the product attributes over here in this particular system, upstream system. It's a non-SAP system. Okay, so while maintaining the product attributes over here, there is a property called product type. Assume that they have a product type. So the product type, they maintain it as, for example, XYZ. Okay, the value. So when you get this product request to MDG, in MDG, corresponding to, they don't, in MDG, actually, I mean, this is my product table. Okay, I have product 1, product 2, product 3. Okay, so here also I have something called product type. Assume that. Okay, now this product type that I'm showing here is not same as this one, because here this product type has to translate into some value that in my ERP layer here. Let's say, for example, the translation is, if it is XYZ, the value will be 1, 2, 3. If it is, for example, let's take differently, X1 here, then it will be, for example, AA. If it is X2 product type, here it will be AB. So in my SAP, I configured this code something like this. Okay, but what I get from upstream is always these values. Okay, so now here I need the values something like this, AA, AB. But what I'm getting from upstream system is always it will be something like this, X1, X2, something like this. Okay, so then what I will do is I will create a kind of SU type 2. Okay, and SU type 2 I will create here. Okay, so just a minute, how it will be solved by SU type 2. Just give me a minute. X1, X2. This is not for translation, it is for okay, yeah. So here I create an SU type 2. Okay, because if you look at this one, this X1 and X2, I don't need anywhere in my ERP layer. Always I'm referring with AA and AB. So what I will do is I will create one SU type 2 staging table, and I will load this X1 and X2, this data. Okay, so for every product I'm receiving, let's say, for example, if I received product 1, for product 1, I received X1. So this X1 will be validated with SU type 2, and X1 is already available. So it is a valid case for me. Again, I get a product 2. The product 2 is having X2. So X2 is also available. It's a valid value. Okay, so when I get product 3, where I'll have, for example, X3, and X3 is not a valid value. So this will result into an error state. But here X1 and X2 I'm accepting from the upstream system because I maintained those list of values. Okay, now when I'm actually approving this, when I'm approving this particular request, when this particular material is moving from here to here, that's where I will have a translation table, something like this, and I will pass X1, I'll get the AA, and AA will get loaded over here. Now if you look at this one, X1 and X2 I need it because whatever the incoming values I'm getting, I need to validate, qualify with this one. So whatever the upstream system is having, I will maintain the same set of data in my staging layer somewhere, because I can maintain this X1, X2 table here also in my ERP layer also, but I don't need it unnecessarily, because in here users will get confused if I maintain this one. Here only these two are important for me. So for this one, I'll have a separate master data table where I'll store AA, AB, something like that. Now, this is my intermediate one. To derive AA and AB, I'm storing this, all these domain data or reference master data in my MDG layer only, because I no need to have this data in my, this X1, X2 are not at all required in my underlying ERP layer.
But Akshay, that X1 means on AA, X2 means AB. How you are getting that?
That's where actually when, yeah, so that's where during my activation time, I can do that particular translation. So this, we are talking about here two things. One is, this is a translation. This anyway you need it when you are creating your material in your underlying ERP table. So you need to go for a translation. So the translation will happen via this particular another table. But the purpose of this table is whatever data I'm receiving, because it's an upstream system, right? So if they're sending X1, X2, or if I don't maintain this kind of domain data table in MDG layer, if I don't maintain this particular table, if they are sending some other value, any value, for example, I will receive it and it won't validate that one. If I have the table something like this, whatever the data that is coming, so it will validate against the list of attributes that I mean list of data records that I have in my table. So this is mandatory for me. So I need to validate the data that is coming from upstream system. So let's say in future, they introduced a new code X3 and they didn't inform us. Then what happens when they send a product with X3 and because X3 is not maintained, it will get failed. So I need to again maintain this value. X3, I'll maintain this value, then only I'll accept this. So that means I'm controlling here also, only I will receive the valid values. In between, if someone is tampering this data with they're sending some X5, X6, something else, then also it will get failed. So that is the time whenever it gets failed, I will talk to this particular people who is sitting over here that you send this value and I don't, this is not a value in my, as per my domain data. So then they will say that it's a junk data, or else no, it is a new configuration, new entry we added. You also adjust your this one. So that is the purpose of your domain data, reference master data, right? Whatever the plants that you are supporting in your organization, you represent with a list of T001 table. Okay, so in this case, I need domain data for two cases. For the incoming thing, I need a domain data, but this domain data will be validated as long this is required as long as I mean until it's a translation happens. Once the translation happens and the material gets created in underlying ERP, so this is what my actual domain data in ERP layer. If you look at this is the domain data in my ERP, and this is the domain data in my MDG layer.
Okay, this is a very good example. Actually, I'm starting to understand it a little more. So you're doing validation plus translation, and it allows your ERP system to not like, you know, have errors or duplicates or anything like that.
Yes, exactly. So now in this scenario, you need this kind of thing in your MDG. So this is one example where in MDG you need to create your own staging table only for reference master data.
Okay, thank you.
Is this clear to everyone?
Yeah, this is good.
Yes.
Okay. So this is SU type 2. So now if you look at this one, how I can load the data into this one, X2, X3, X4, there is no change request required. SAP provide an utility, file upload utility. Any SU type 2, you can load it. When you create a SU type 2 in any data model, you no need to create any UI application or anything to load the data. So there is an option in MDG where you can actually, you go with the file upload option. Of course, we will discuss this file upload later. Just let me show you once. Okay, so you can see there is something called file upload option. So once you go to this file upload option, okay, select your data model. This UI is a generic application, this one. So you can select your data model. Okay, so let's say for example, YP is our data model. So I'll say YP. Okay, so once you select the YP, usually it shows all available entities over here. All means type 1s, type 4s, and type 2s as well. Okay, not type 3s, because we don't load the type 3 data will be loaded in ERP layer using SPRO configuration or something else. But type 1 and type 4, and also type, if you have any type 2, it will show you type 2 also. Now, if at all I'm loading material type 1 entity, then at the last step, it will ask for a change request process. And again, if I'm loading a plan data type 4 also, at the last step, when I'm there at the step 4, then again it will ask to choose a change request type. But if I'm selecting type 2, then it won't ask for any CR. It will just directly load the data into the staging table. So that is how actually I can load whenever there is a new product types are there, new categories are there, I can load the data without any CR process. Okay, so that's why you can see the description says that changeable via without change request. So to load more records into your the reference master data or domain data tables which exist in your MDG layer, there is no change request. And also when you select a type 2, automatically system creates the staging table for you. I don't call it as a staging table, because staging table you will call it is when you are creating some data, material or vendor or something, it will be there temporarily. And after that, once whether it's approved or rejected, depends on that one, it will delete the data over there. So records will get created and records will get deleted there in your staging tables for type 1s and type 4s. But type 2, always the data will be there. It's a persistent data in your type 2, in the stage type 2 staging tables. Okay, so system will generate tables for you so that, and the table you can load it using file upload option. Okay, so that is about type 2. Okay,
Akshay, just please go back to that NWBC screen once.
yeah.
Can you please tell me the steps? A type of transfer is from the drop down, you have to select attribute or what? Yes.
It's always attributes.
Okay, then variant.
Variant is we will discuss this file upload option later.
I was just actually jotting down the steps.
Okay, no problem. So let me show you what is variant means. Usually this is also one way of loading the data, master data into your MDG system using file upload. There are 4 to 5 approaches are there. Out of that, file upload is one approach. So in case of file upload, what happens is usually you don't know the format of in which format the field should be there. So in that case, what happens, usually you select the entity that you wanted to load, and when you go to next step, you need to prepare a file format over here, what attributes you wanted to load. Okay, I wanted to load this one, I wanted to load this, and I wanted to load these two things. Okay, key information. So when you select at this level, okay, so you added this data you wanted to load. Okay, now what happens, every time you need to come and select these attributes. Instead of that one, once I reach to the next step, final step, okay, here till here, okay, and I can save it as a variant. When I save it as a variant, next time when I come and when I open this file upload option, then I no need to do that selection format and everything. I need to just select my variant in the first step itself.
Choosing the attribute means in that particular staging table that represents a particular entity. Inside that entity, whatever are the attributes, those attributes.
Yes. Yeah. So if you look at this one, you are not loading all those data. Probably this data you wanted to skip. I wanted to only load this data, or I wanted to modify only this data using from my file. In that case, you will be choosing the attributes and in a particular sequence. In your input file also should have the same sequence. The attribute should be in the same sequence. Okay, so every time selection doing this particular file structure for preparation, and if you look at the next one, there are certain settings are there. Okay, you have these different options. Okay, we will discuss what is these different options when we are discussing about the file upload. So you will be selecting, you will be doing some settings also over here. So the entire this particular setting, I'll save it as a variant. And next time when I open this UI, when I come to this material governance page, okay, and when I go to the file upload option, that time instead of repeating all these steps, we will just simply select the variant. Okay, here. Once you go to this one, you can select the variant directly, so that all this step 2, 3, 4 will be automatically pre-populated. Once you do this, you need to just navigate to step 2 and then step 3 and step 4, just verify that, and finally you can just execute upload. That's it. So usually what happens is we create these variants and we will provide it to the business users, because when you look, if you look at material entity, there are around 60 to 70 attributes are there. But for business, they don't know which attribute they need to do, select or they need to upload. So you get the requirement from the business. Okay, all the time I wanted to block per every, I wanted to block materials in bulk. So in this case, what you will do, you select the material entity, you select that material number and the block field, and then just prepare a variant and give it to them. So then next, every time they just select that variant and they just simply upload the file. Okay, they no need to select all these attributes and everything. So it will ease their job. So, I mean, there are multiple uses are there. We will discuss that variant and all these attributes when we go to the file upload topic. Okay. Fine.
Actually, I just have a question with SU type 2.
Yes, yes. Please.
So that can be for an SU type 2, you can use that as an attribute for SU under SU type 4, or you can use it under SU type 1. Is that correct? Or
yeah, you can use it as a, similarly, if you look at our SU type 3, we used it as a key attribute via qualifying relationship, and we also used it as a normal attribute in type 4 via reference relationship. So the same applicable for type 2 as well.
Okay. Thank you.
The only difference where this table lies is the difference, that's it, resides.
Okay, yeah.
Fine. After this, once we create this particular data model, so we also created something called business object type. Okay, so business object type is something like uniquely identifies your master data. So SAP provided one business object type. If you look at this one, for business partner, 147 is a business object BO type number. Similarly, for customer, 159. Wherever you, I mean, in MDG or in consolidation or DQM, everywhere this, it will be referred with this business object number only. 147 means it is always business partner, and 159 means it's always customer, and 194 is for material always. Okay, 194 is for material. Okay, so similarly for our master data also we need to create one business object type. So that's where we created one business object type. Okay, so that which will start with our data model underscore BOT, business object type. You create this particular data model business object type, and after that we need to link that business object type to our data model YP. And entity types, you can go back to the type 1 entity. Under type 1 entity you have something called business object type, and just link that over here and say it as a root. This is my root object, root master data, root entity. So that is what we are just saying over here. Okay, so now this is the purpose of business object type, and later we will be using this business object type when we are creating an UI application, and I need to link my data model. So then only I will get all the attributes, all the entities, attributes information onto my UI application. How it happens? When I'm creating an UI application, I will link the business object type. When I link the business object type, automatically the entities and the attributes will automatically come on my UI application. There I need to drag and drop what attributes I need to show it on the UI application. That is from the UI point of view. Okay, and similarly, when you are doing the process modeling configurations or data replication configurations, it asks for the business object type only. Via business object type, we will be linking our data model or master data. So let's look at material master data model also. If you go to entity types, the type 1 entity over here is material. So material is the root entity, type 1 entity, okay, corresponding to your Mara table. So now let's select material entity, and if you go to business object types, 194. This is how SAP linked for the standard ones. For the custom ones, we created our Y business object type and we linked over here. Okay. Now this is about a business object type, and you can also look at, I think in the last session we just I just showed you that a visualization part for data model also. Okay, so let's collapse everything. At the top you have data model, and this is your type 1 entity. Okay, so this is your data model and this is your type 1 entity. Forget about, there are other 3 type 1 entities are there. I'll explain this later, but at this time you can just assume that only one type 1. Okay, we will use only one type 1 only. These are SAP created for different purpose to support some other functionalities. I'll explain this later. Okay, so this is your type 1, and under type 1 you have all these attributes, direct attributes, and also you also have some dependent attributes, nothing but your type 4 attributes. So the folder ones always represents your type 4s. Okay, so these folders always represents your type 4s. Okay, now these are the type 4s, and when you expand a type 4, you will find the attributes under type 4 child attribute, and this represents it's a reference entity, reference relationship. Okay, so this attribute got added via reference relationship, and this got added via qualifying relation, and this is with the leading relation. Okay, now this is how, I mean, whatever we have developed, it is in line with this MM and BP data models only, so nothing different. Okay, so the only thing is that here you'll have multiple type 4s. Okay, now after this particular entities business object type, okay, we'll come back to this hierarchies later, not at this point of time. Hierarchies, I hardly use the hierarchies, but I'll explain it a little later. Okay, so then we also discussed about the relationships. Relationships also we discussed, and we also discussed about reuse active areas. So reuse active area, you need to create, if at all, if it is a reuse mode, you need to create an custom access class, and that access class you can link with some free text active area, and this particular active area will be linked at your data model level. Okay, if at all you wanted to build a reuse mode. Okay, so for the standard, SAP is already provided that active areas and access classes. For custom one, we need to create our own access classes. Okay, now how to create those access classes? You can refer the standard access class SAP provided for material master, or else SAP also provided one sample access class for this one, S-Flight. If you take this S-Flight example, so for S-Flight also SAP provided one access class. So you can actually refer this access class. SAP given exclusively this for your reference purpose only. This access class has contains save, read, query, different methods. So how to write the logic inside? Basically, all the CRUD operations we need to handle inside this access class. So how to handle and all that stuff, SAP provided the reference logic over here. You can refer. But I haven't come across any for custom data models. To create a new access classes. Most of the time, people will create it as a flex mode only instead of creating it as a reuse mode, and they go for some kind of a shortcut techniques to push the data into your underlying ERP or active area layer. Okay, so that we will discuss when we are talking about workflows. During the workflow,
Akshay, another question, like while reading it, when we again search that save material or profit center in NWBC and again get it, because the access class reads it through the read method,
yes,
right? From
yes,
the
yes,
database layer,
that's true.
ECC layer.
That's
So
true.
how does that happen in case of Flex? Because access class is not there.
In case of Flex, what happens is you will have your active area also into the staging tables, right? So the active records will be there in the staging table. So
Okay.
I no need to really read it data from my the active area, because whatever I have in my active area, it's a copy of my staging area active records only.
Right, right.
Okay, so reading the data from your staging tables will be taken care by MDG framework. We no need to write any logic for that one. Okay, these access classes will take care of reading the data from active area, that is your Maramasi tables. But in our case, I already have that data in my staging table, the active records. So there is no need for me to read the data from my active area. Got it?
Okay, okay, got it. Even if it goes into the ECC layer, when it goes through DRF, after that also it remains forever.
Yeah. So your
Okay.
finance data model is the best example. Even in case of finance data model also, you will have your active area, active records in your staging table only.
Through 0 and 1.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why you don't need to actually go for an access class technique. But the best practice is you create a proper access class and go with this one. But that requires a lot of development and everything. That's why most of the people will go with the reuse mode only. Okay, sorry, flex mode only.
Flex
Flex
mode.
mode. That reduces your development effort considerably. So that's why people will prefer that shortcut techniques. Okay, but if at all you need that data into your active area tables, then there is certain shortcut techniques are there in the we will discuss during the workflow topic. Okay, now
Okay.
after that there is something called a prefix and package for prefix and packages for model enhancements. Okay, so this is required basically if at all you are extending the standard data models. Okay, what happens is I wanted to create a new custom entity in my data model. In that case, all the standard entities under data model, if you look at the data model, okay, in case of data model, okay, you have data model. This data model has the standard entities like material, plant, and probably valuation. There are different entities are there, type 1 and type 4. So all these entities and the corresponding staging tables are get stored into the standard package, standard SAP package / MDG / MM, something like that. Okay, but when you are adding a custom attribute Z entity, so this Z entity where it should, what is in which package it should store, it won't actually store into this package. You need to specify here your package name here. Okay, data model, click on new entry, data model, what is the prefix? Prefix could be ZMDG, and what is the package? So on the standard data models, if you are enhancing something, like all your custom enhancements get stored into the package that you provided over here. Okay, this is for that particular purpose. Okay, now after that you have something called data model specific structures. So okay, so what are these structures? Okay, so this is your UI application where you will be creating your material master data. Like you will have material related information, one section, and you will be having a plant related section, and you will be having something called sales related section. So different sections are there on the UI application. So each section is corresponding to one entity on your data model. Okay, so you have your MDG data model. Data model is nothing but, here I'm saying it's your staging table, MDG staging table you have. We also have your active area. Active area is nothing but your Mara Marcy table, active area DB. Active area DB. Here it's a Mara table. I'm just taking example of Mara table. Here it is a staging tables. Staging tables. Okay. Now user opens this UI application, okay, and he enters some data, material related data. As soon as you submit that request, the data will be handed over back to your staging database. Okay, and after that, once approver opens this particular request to approve that, again the data is already there in your staging table in active record, that will be read and it will be shown over here for this approver, this particular person. And he will do some more changes, approver, and he will again click on approve button. Then again the data goes back and updates into your staging table. After that, finally there will be a final approver, a steward will come and he will finally review the data and he will actually activate that record. When he activates the record, if he is doing any changes, then those changes will be reflected back to your staging table, and from here the data will be pushed to your underlying active area, that is your Mara Marcy table. Okay, so now to flow this particular data between your UI application and your MDG staging tables and your active area, and again there is another person, he opens the, he wanted to, he will be searching the your material. Okay, so let me show you here, where is this material? Okay, so I'll go to my material UI application. Okay, search material. So once you search the material here, what happens is this particular, once you search query that material, it will search your active area and also it will search your staging area, and the combined result will be displayed, your active area and your active area data and your staging area records combinedly displayed on your UI application. Let me do a search. Now when I do a search, basically it reads your active area Maramarsi table database active area table, and it shows all the list of materials over here. Okay, now for this particular, let's say for example, if you look at this one, to move the data between these three layers, okay, technically from the ABAP point of view, MDG framework requires certain structures and also some tables. Tables in the sense, these are your internal tables. We call it as the internal tables or internal tables and structures. So whenever you activate your entity data, whenever you activate your data model in the backend, we know that it generates this particular staging table. Along with the tables, it also generates the required artifacts, required structures and tables, so that when you create your UI application and to move the data back and forth between all these three layers, these structures will be utilized. So when you are activating your MDG data model, it's not only the staging tables gets generated in the backend, it also generates your staging tables and structures. So that generated structures and tables you can see over here. Data model specific structures. So for every entity, it generates the staging tables. Now let's look at our data model. Our data model is YP data model, and go back to this one. You can see for our type 1 entity. Type 1 entity is this one, YProd. For type 1 entity, it created these many structures, and you don't exactly find that structure name over here. You will have only the prefix and the suffix of that particular structure. Okay, so why these many 1 to 10? Why 1 to 10 structures are there? Because these are the structures used at different places. So if you take this first structure, when if at all you are using PDF forms, you need this particular structure. If at all during your data replication, this structure will be used. So each type of structure is meant for different purpose. Okay, and this particular structure will be used between when you are doing this these operations, save and read. Okay, so between these two things, this structure is mandatory. If this particular structure is not available, then this entire flow won't work. Basically, your activation and your reading the data from your active area won't work. And if you don't have this particular structure, your replication framework won't work. And for the search applications, if you look at the search application that I showed you just now, there in the backend, it uses this structure. So, and if some fields you wanted to make it mandatory read only, you wanted to control the field properties, then these two structures are required. And this particular structure contains your key attributes of your master data. And this will be used during your data extractions. This structure will be. So likewise, every structure meant for different purpose, and it will be used when that particular scenario you are executing. But this should be generated automatically when you are activating your data model. Okay, similarly, this is for type 1. And similarly, if you look at for type 4 also. For type 4 also, system generated the structures. Okay, whatever required for type 1s and type 4s, it will generate accordingly those structures. Now let's look at how I can actually look at the structure name. It's a nothing but SC11 object only, similar to table. It's a structure name. You can see, copy this, this one. Let's say, for example, copy this. Go to SC11. Okay, go to data type. Prefix will be ZMM and suffix will be this one. Okay, so what I will do is I'll ZMM star and I'll just put this one. Okay, and when you do F4, search for structures. So these are the structures. Now always take this first one, okay? And if you look at, so it has your this is equivalent to your the table only, the staging table corresponding to staging table. This is the structure. Okay, so likewise, so again, when you add new attributes under entity and when you activate the data model, this structure will be readjusted. If you are adding new attributes, those will be available, get added over here. So we need to just verify once your data model is activated, you need to just verify these structures are in active state or not. If you miss one of these structures, when you create an UI application or when you are doing that particular processing, right? If the structure is not available, you will see some dumps in the system that it says that by looking at the dump, this particular structure is not generated or it is not active, or this particular attribute is not available in this structure. So you'll get some errors over there. Okay, so that's why always you need to look at that particular structures also. So MDG IMG, okay, data model specific structure. Just have a look at whether these structures are there. Randomly take one of these names and go to S11 and just verify whether these are created correctly or not. That's it. Okay. Sometimes what happens is in older version, this is in the latest S4 version, or I would say not even in S4, even MDG 9.2. Before MDG 9.2, in older version, these structures it won't automatically generate. You need to go and manually generate these structures in older releases. Okay. So for that one, you need to go to MDG IMG. In the general settings, you have something called under the data modeling only. There is a node over here, generate data model specific structures. So if you go over here, select your data model, go to structures. You need to click on new entry and add your entity and select this. Like again, add the same entity, again select the second where used. So likewise, you need to click on new entry and add this 1 to 10. This is for your type 1. Similarly for type 4, again, click a new entry and add all these 1 to 10. This right hand side, it automatically generates. You no need to fill anything. All you need to do, click on new entry and add this entity type and where used. Automatically, the remaining will get added automatically. Once all these things you added, then you need to just click on generate selected structures. Select all or else go back to your data model and click on generate structures. This is the time actually those structures gets created. It's a manual additional step for us in the older releases. But with the latest version, you can see we haven't generated this. So, but when I come and see over here, it automatically available over there. Okay, so this is also again another step. Once you create the data model, business object type, then just verify these structures are there or not. If it generates, fine, just validate that. If it's not generating, then you select the data model, come to this configuration, add only for type 1 and type 4 is enough. For type 3, it is not required. Okay, so for type 1s and type 4s, add all that those structures over there and click on generate structure. That's it. Okay, so this is for generating these structures. Okay, after this you have something called prefix. Okay, as I said earlier, if you selected that number range as an internal number range, and we discussed about this one temporary number range object. Okay, so whenever you are creating a new material, let's say for example, I wanted to create a new material. Okay, so initially system generates one number range from the MDG temporary number range object. This one will be maintained at the type 1 entity level. If you remember, at the type 1 entity level, we have one number range object, which we call it as a temporary number range object. Okay, as long as this material gets approved, gets activated, you will refer with this internal number range, temporary number range. Okay, once this material get activated and posted in your ECC, this number will be replaced with the actual material number. So to identify whether it's the internal number or the number entered by the external, SAP adds this prefix dollar, so that wherever you see this dollar, it indicates it's a temporary internal number range object generated. Now, whether I wanted to add it as a dollar prefix or something else, that you can configure over here. For MM, by default, dollar is there. For BP, you see dollar is there. But of course, we don't touch this one. We always use the dollar only. We never get into a situation where you need to change the prefixes. But this is a configuration. If you replace dollar with hash, and then when you are creating a new material, here it will have something like this. Hash 161. Okay, SAP has given it as a configurable one. Okay, and after that, another one is define authorization relevancy per entity type. Okay, so this configuration, by default, what happens is if you are creating a material, okay, if I have authorization to extend these materials to plants or sales, so for all these things, I should have that ERP authorization objects. Whatever the authorization objects that you have, it will refer MDG in your MM01 or MM02. The same authorization objects will be referred even in MDG also. So if I don't have the same the standard ERP authorizations for material master, from MDG applications also, I cannot create a material, I cannot extend that one. So this is the default behavior. Your MDG access class, the access class that is available at in the backup at your MM data model. So that access class always executes, refers that authorizations. It will execute the authorizations of your ECC. And if you are not authorized, it will throw an error there. You are not authorized. Okay. So that is the default behavior. Okay. Now I don't want it to go with that. So here, basically, let's say, for example, MM. Okay. By default, what happens is here, all these are unticked. This is your type 1 entity. Sorry, this is your reuse area. And this is unticked. That means here, if at all, this untick means it will use the default ECC authorizations. Okay. If it is ticked, that means it is MDG specific authorization. So here you can take a call whether you wanted to use the standard out of box authorizations or else you wanted to validate on your own. You wanted to perform your own authorizations. You don't want it to go with the standard. Okay, so that is again controllable over here. And 100% usually we don't touch these authorization objects. I mean these configurations for the standard objects, for standard objects and standard entities. For example, you created your own custom entity under material master. Then for the custom entity, there is no out of box material master authorization object, right? It's a custom entity. So SAP doesn't handle any authorizations. So that's where you can actually, what you can do is you can go back to authorizations per entity, and you can actually assume that for the MM data model, you have a custom entity. There you can select this checkbox. When you select this checkbox, what happens is, that means it will, you no need to create any custom authorization object. SAP MDG provided by default USMD underscore MDAT. There is one authorization object, out of box authorization object is there. USMD underscore MDAT. So you can make use of this authorization object for your custom entities. So this authorization object has your entity name, your key fields. So security guys can actually maintain this value. Okay, your entity name, your data model, your what activities you wanted to perform that particular custom entity. I wanted to give only read authorization for the custom entity for one set of users. So here I'll say activity is only read only. I wanted to allow them to create and change. So then you can select create and change. I wanted to only allow the person to change that custom entity, then only change. So likewise, your data model, MM data model, the activity, you will have your entity name, your custom entity name, and what are the key fields. So security can maintain now. With this one approach is you no need to actually again ask the security to create a custom custom authorization objects. So you can make use of the standard USMD this authorization MDAT authorization object only for all custom entities. I have one authorization custom entity in I have one custom entity in BP. So for both the things, you can use MDAT only, but depends on the entity that you maintain in data model, it will validate the authorizations accordingly. So that's why for the standard entities and data model, let the standard authorizations takes place only when you have an custom entities and you have a requirement to control that through authorization, that entity maintenance, then you can actually go for this particular configuration. Similarly, I showed you at entity level. You also have something called at attribute level as well.
So question here, Akshay. So USMD MDAT that can support custom material fields and custom
Yes,
vendor and
custom.
all right.
Yeah,
doesn't
it
matter, just
support.
one.
Yeah. So let's say, for example, our custom data model is this one, YP, right? I can go back to this one. I'll say, okay, here itself, wait. Okay, I'll select my data model. Here I can actually add my entities are already there here automatically, but by default it doesn't use MDAT. I need to come and explicitly say that use MDAT authorization. Then accordingly I need to ask my security guys to create the role with these authorizations. Okay, these data model and these entities, and with the activities, create, change, display, delete with this one. So then when you create your own UI application, if you have authorization, then only if your role has that authorization, then only you can actually create this material, and you can extend the material to multiple plants.
So the authorization is at the object level.
Yeah.
And okay.
Yeah, object and even at entity level as well. I mean, for a particular entity also you can control.
So you and I are, let's say, two different users, and your authorization, your setup read one attribute, let's say color as an example, material color, and I don't have authorization at the entity at that attribute level. Can you prevent me seeing looking up the colors, and you can see the colors because you have authorized attribute level?
Yes. So I should be able to, because I have the authorization, I should be able to edit or modify or display or read only whatever that one. But because you don't have authorization, you cannot edit that.
I see. Okay.
Okay. So yeah. So basically, instead of SAP provided one default authorization object with all those parameters, where you can use it for custom data models, custom standard data models, custom entities, not for the standard data model with standard entities. Better always, that is not suggestible. Okay. Yeah. So I think that is about the authorizations as well. Okay, so after that, there is something called SMT mapping. This SMT mapping topic we will discuss when we are talking about extensions or BP extensions. So currently we are in the process of creating custom data model and the custom UI application. And after once this is done, we will go back to the material data model extensions. So during that time, this SMT mapping come into picture. For custom data models, this is not required. So I will come back to this particular configuration when we are doing the extensions with custom entities and custom attributes. Okay, so with this one, the data model is completed. Okay, whatever is required for our custom objects. Okay, now, so that means currently we completed this particular portion, this data model, custom data model with all the staging and all other relations, entities, everything. Okay, so tomorrow we will start with this application. Tomorrow we will work on this UI application. So what are the different UI applications are there in MDG, and we will look at what are the components in each UI application, what we call. So we will discuss all those elements of your UI modeling, and then we will construct a new UI, brand new UI application for our custom data model without writing single line of code. Okay, so we can develop an UI application. Okay, so without writing any code and everything. Okay, I'll explain all the necessary things to to understand all the UI concepts. Okay, so in fact you don't really require knowledge, you don't require that knowledge on the WebDrin Pro and all those things. I'll explain whatever the limited stuff that you need to know to complete an UI application. Okay, so as part of this UI application, we will be covering many UI enhancements for the standard, and what are the different options are there, how I can enhance the UI applications for the custom versus standard. So all those things we'll be discussing. Okay, so regarding the system access, so does anyone got the system access?
I'm using the one at work. I have a
Okay.
sandbox, so I can do anything
Great.
pretty much there.
Yeah. What about others?
Yeah, I was given system access.
Okay, great. So if you have access to that our training system, then maybe you can start practicing the data model. I'll give you an use case tomorrow, and then you can start during your week. You can actually work on that the data model and let me know if you are having any challenges. We can discuss in the coming up session. Okay, so tomorrow we'll discuss about the UI application. Towards end of that tomorrow session, I'll give you an use case. Maybe if you have time, you can actually work on that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so that's all I have for today. And if no questions, thank you all. We'll catch up tomorrow.